Good evening and welcome to Chicago Tonight. I'm Paris Schutz. Brandis Friedman has the evening off. On the show tonight, a pro sports team plans a facility on land promised for public housing. We're live from Irving Park for our In Your Neighborhood series and meet one of the musicians set to play at the Chicago Blues Festival. But we start tonight with reaction to what has transpired over the last 2+ hours, the first primetime televised hearing of the Congressional Select Committee on January 6th. Committee chairs Benny Thompson, a Democrat, and Liz Cheney, a Republican, made what amounted to prosecutorial-type opening statements laying out the case to come, accusing former President Trump of being at the center of what they referred to as a 7-part plan to try and illegally overturn the election and seize power. That was then followed by dramatic video from the Capitol riots, much of it never before seen, and first-hand testimony from Capitol Police Officer Caroline Edwards and filmmaker Nick Quested. And joining us for reaction to tonight's events are James Robinault, partner and litigation attorney at the law firm Thompson Hire. He is the author of the book January 1973, Watergate, Roe v. Wade, Vietnam, and the Month That Changed America Forever. Robert Pape, professor of political science at the University of Chicago and international security and domestic terrorism specialist, and Jill Wine-Banks, who served as a special prosecutor during Watergate. Then she later served as general counsel of the U.S. Army. She is an MSNBC legal analyst and the author of The Watergate Girl. And thank you all for joining us here. Robert Pape, I'll start with you. You were on Capitol Hill testifying about right-wing extremism, white supremacist groups, but I want to get your reaction to what you saw over the last 2 hours, starting with the case made by chairs Benny Thompson and Liz Cheney.
This was incredibly powerful. It was powerful in ways we expected, that there would be testimony and footage we hadn't seen before that would show a violent attack on the Capitol. That was powerful. But more important, this was powerful in ways we didn't really expect. Liz Cheney laid out clearly the goal of this hearing and the future hearings, which are to prove that Donald Trump called, assembled, and incited a violent revolt in order to prevent the peaceful transfer of presidential power. That is sedition. That is an insurrection. That is exactly prosecutable in a criminal court. That is what the impeachment hearings did not do against Donald Trump. Now, this committee does not have the power of a prosecutorial court. This is to put pressure on the Justice Department, and this is Joe Biden's Justice Department, to bring charges against President Trump, not years from now, but probably by the fall. And
co-chairman Cheney did use the word illegal and said Donald Trump was at the center of this. Let's listen to some of Cheney's opening statements.
On the morning of January 6th, President Donald Trump's intention was to remain President of the United States, despite the lawful outcome of the 2020 election and in violation of his constitutional obligation to relinquish power.
Jill Wine-Banks, this is a role you're very familiar with. It sounded like Cheney was a prosecutor here, and she opened with evidence proving that Donald Trump knew indeed he lost the election. What did you make of the prosecutorial-like strategy?
I think that both Chairman Thompson and Vice Chair Cheney did amazing opening statements. They did lay out a plot to commit the end of democracy. They took part in adventure, and they laid out what the future hearings are going to show about all of the parts of that, including the fake electors, including the memos and legal cases that were brought that were fraudulent. But they also laid out and then had live testimony, and I would point specifically to Attorney General Barr and to the former president's daughter, Ivanka, in terms of his intent and his knowledge. And that's very important as a prosecutor, is to be able to prove that he knew the facts and he acted despite those, and that he tried in every way he could. When the Department of Justice wouldn't do what he wanted, he did exactly what Richard Nixon did. He wanted to fire the Attorney General, except that the Attorney General said, everyone is going to quit if you do that. And so he backed off of that, which Richard Nixon didn't. He did fire the Attorney General because the Attorney General wouldn't fire my boss, the special prosecutor. So there are many similarities to then, but the dissimilarities are really remarkable too. And that is that we had bipartisanship. We had 3 networks and they all had the same facts, and people believe facts. They matter. Now we have Fox News, which can no longer be called Fox News, Fox Entertainment, maybe, Fox Opinion for sure. They aren't even broadcasting this hearing. And that is a mistake in ever so many ways, but it is a real threat to democracy.
And very interestingly, some of the evidence was the Fox personality Sean Hannity basically texting Kayleigh McEnany, begging people to get Trump under control to, quote unquote, land this plane. Now, Jim Robineau, you've worked very closely with John Dean on sort of disseminating the lessons learned from Watergate. Woodward and Bernstein wrote an op-ed this weekend saying, indeed, this is worse than Watergate, in their opinion, and Trump and Nixon are 2 presidents that Washington and the founders feared, in that they, from what appears from all the evidence, tried to illegally hold on to power. Do you agree with that assessment? This is indeed worse than Watergate.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these were 2 authoritarian presidents who wanted to take power and believed in power over democracy. Certainly Richard Nixon did, even though he was a lawyer, and Trump, who was not a lawyer, saw this as an avenue to retain power for power's sake. And so this is worse than Watergate. Richard Nixon at least resigned when the evidence was stacked against him. Trump just doubled down and continued to say the great lie. And to this day, he continues to peddle that lie. And so it is very much worse than Watergate.
It's worse because he was trying to undo democracy. He was trying to take away the right to have the people make the decision about who holds office. Richard Nixon was definitely trying to take down the Department of Justice. He was obstructing justice. He was interfering with the FBI, the CIA, but he wasn't trying to end democracy.
And Jill Wine-Banks, you brought up that video from Attorney General Bill Barr, the former Attorney General. Let's just quickly hear what Bill Barr said in that testimony.
I had 3 discussions with the president that I can recall. One was on November 23rd, one was on December 1st, and one was on December 14th. And I've been through sort of the give and take of those discussions. And in that context, I made it clear I did not agree with the idea of saying the election was stolen and putting out this stuff, which I told the president was bullshit.
All right, important testimony there. Bob Pape, you wanted to jump in here.
Well, I wanted to call attention to another difference with Watergate, which is this is more dangerous than Watergate. So at our center, the Chicago Project on Security and Threats, we have been doing nationally representative surveys of how many people in America believe the use of force to restore Trump to the presidency is justified. Not back on January 6, 2001, but now. Our most recent survey was of April, just a few weeks ago. What we found is that the equivalent of 18 million people in America today, 18 million adults, believe, number 1, Joe Biden is an illegitimate president, and number 2, the use of force to restore Trump to the presidency is justified. This is a very dangerous and precarious moment for our democracy because Donald Trump himself has tremendous sway over those 18 million people. And this is something that isn't just about past, this is about the summer. So as we go forward, and likely there'll be pressure to prosecute Donald Trump, unfortunately, he will have more dangerous options than Richard Nixon.
Certainly a threat against democracy persists here. Jim Robineau, there was another op-ed suggesting that there needed to be a John Dean here, a key witness in Watergate, obviously. Is there a Dean here in testimony that would be equivalent to that you might see coming up?
Jill and I have talked about this. I think that Trump's White House counsel, a guy named Pat Cipollone, and it was kind of said tonight that he's going to be involved in this hearing one way or another, maybe through his previous testimony or live testimony, he's White House counsel like John Dean. He was there in the last moment. He tried to stop Trump, and his group, as we were told tonight, threatened to resign altogether if Trump went forward with what he was doing. So Pat Cipollone could be a bit of a John Dean character, and he holds the exact same office.
All right.
I thought the same thing, but I now think that the narrator is the committee, and they are narrating this, the same way that John Dean did. It's not as good as having an insider who committed the crimes admitting them on screen. And I think Pat Cipollone is a possibility. Mark Short is a possibility.
And you're referring to the chief of staff to the former Vice President Pence.
Yes.
Right.
All right, well, a very intense few hours here, and we do thank you so much for joining us to recap it, and more to come, obviously. Our thanks for now to James Robinault, Robert Pape, and Jill Wine-Banks. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's more Chicago Tonight just ahead, so please stick around.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabie family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Earlier this year, city officials announced big plans for a vacant site on the near west side. The Chicago Fire Football Club wants to build a multi-million-dollar practice and training facility near Roosevelt and Ashland there. But the proposal to sign a long-term lease for the empty land has sparked backlash since it is the former site of Chicago Housing Authority homes that the agency tore down and has yet to rebuild. In partnership with ProPublica and reporter Mick Dumke, Chicago Tonight's Nick Blumberg has the story.
Laura Donaldson knows what it's like to not have a place to live.
You should not die before you get housing that you have a right to as a human being.
An advocate for people with disabilities who herself was once homeless, she lives in the Chicago Housing Authority's Brooks homes on the near west side after spending years on the agency's waiting list.
They don't understand what it means to have to decide on eating today or taking your medicine today. If I hadn't have advocated for myself with the help of others, I wouldn't have the housing I do now.
That's why when she heard a huge plot of vacant CHA land was set to become a practice facility for the Chicago Fire soccer team,
I'm not very happy, to put it mildly, because housing is needed everywhere, and the fire don't need anything.
On January 27th, the city and the CHA announced a plan to lease nearly 26 acres to the fire so it can build 6 soccer fields and offices. Housing Authority CEO Tracy Scott.
That property has been sitting vacant for 20 years. And so it is now time for us to do something productive with it.
According to emails obtained by ProPublica, the vacant CHA land was suggested by the mayor's staff after an earlier parcel on the northwest side fell through.
I think it caught a lot of people by surprise.
ProPublica reporter Mick Dumke has been covering public housing in Chicago for years.
At one point in time on this site, the Abbott homes once stood. Between 1,000 and 1,200 families lived in the Abbott homes. And the Abbott homes are part of a bigger development here on the near west side called Abla.
Many of the units in those 4 developments, Adams, Brooks, Loomis, and Abbott, were demolished 2 decades ago as part of the CHA's so-called Plan for Transformation. After years of allowing buildings to decay, the agency tore down huge portions of its property portfolio and promised it would rebuild demolished units and rehab the ones left standing.
The CHA has very haltingly rebuilt some of the communities that they dismantled through the Plan for Transformation. And this is one of the areas where they had promised to rebuild, and they haven't met their commitments.
At the time the teardowns started, the Abla homes had nearly 3,600 units. In 2003, the CHA said it planned to rehab or build nearly 2,900. Over the last 2 decades, they've only completed about 1,100, nearly 1,800 units short of what was promised. And despite the shortfall of new or rehabbed housing, the proposed soccer facility isn't the only way the CHA has used vacant land for projects other than housing.
Land that once housed people was turned into a police station. In other places, on the site of old Cabrini Green property, a Target store went in. A grocery store has been built in, a charter school, there's a tennis clinic. that was built on the south side.
The deal with the fire has generated particular anger because the team is owned by Joe Mansueto, billionaire founder of the investment research firm Morningstar. In a statement, a Chicago Fire spokesperson said, quote, "When this location was offered by the city, we viewed it as an opportunity to increase our investment on the near west side while securing a site for a world-class performance center."
That's how they do the Black and Latino communities.
Bryant Spencer grew up in the Obla homes. In fact, he was born there because his mom couldn't get to the hospital in time.
Back then, you can leave your doors open all night, your windows open. We all took turns going to each other's house, eating, picnicking, and barbecuing, doing things like that. When you came home from school, if your mom and dad weren't home, you went to your neighbor's house.
Spencer moved away in the 1990s, but he's still friends with people he met at Obla and spends time in the area. His message to the CHA?
Just keep your promise. Just keep your word. You know, that's with anyone, politician or not. That's all you got of your word.
At the same time as the mayor and the CHA are pushing for this deal with the fire, Chicago's facing an affordable housing crisis. More than 30,000 people are on the CHA's waiting list, and the city's housing commissioner says Chicago needs at least 120,000 more affordable units to keep up with demand.
All in favor, please say aye.
The practice facility plan needs the nod from the federal government. Last month, the CHA board signed off on asking for that approval. The city council will eventually have to sign off as well. For its part, the CHA said in a statement that the deal will create jobs and help pay for rehab at some of the buildings still standing on the Obla site. Quote, "Our present and future needs and the housing needs of low-income families woefully outpace the proposed federal funding amounts. This public-private partnership helps us deliver quality housing."
The need is there. I mean, there's no question about that. There's no question about it. The question is, what is the city going to do?
Rod Wilson, executive director of the Eugenia Burns Hope Center, has been organizing CHA residents to protest agency decisions, including this proposal.
The CHA does not do a good job in informing folks. They'll say we had a hearing, we let folks know. They don't do a good job. It's a checklist.
Current and former residents and neighbors have expressed surprise at the project. Some are supportive of the idea, hoping for an economic boost to the community. But there's been plenty of pushback, in part due to the CHA's long-standing failure to meet its two-decade-old promises. In a statement, the agency says of the fire proposal, quote, "We've held significant public engagement around this project thus far, and the response has been overwhelmingly positive, including from CHA resident leadership."
We cannot be a world-class city if we only appreciate those who are the most affluent. The thing that makes us a world-class city is how we treat the most vulnerable.
CHA resident Laura Donaldson puts it more simply.
This should be used for housing, not a practice field.
And Nick Blumberg joins us now with more on this story. Nick, what have other elected officials said about this plan?
Well, Paris, when I spoke with organizer Rod Wilson, who we just met in the package, he said some members of the city council that they've spoken with are receptive to the idea that this site should have more housing instead of a practice facility, but other politicians seem to be getting on board. Alderman Jason Irvin represents this area, and a resident told our colleague McDumke from ProPublica that at a community meeting, Irvin told those gathered essentially, look, the mayor called me up. She seems to be using her political muscle to get this deal approved, so the neighborhood might as well get what it can out of the project.
So it seems like Mayor Lightfoot really wants this proposal. So what are the next steps for this site?
Well, as we mentioned, the CHA board moved ahead on getting approval from the Federal Department of Housing and Urban Development. The city council will also need to sign off on it, but you're exactly right. Mayor Lightfoot, as well as the Chicago Fire, are eager for this deal to get approved. It's possible construction could start as early as this year. Now, as for the rest of the vacant land on the site, the mayor introduced an ordinance into city council earlier this year that would move forward on financing the construction of about 200 new homes. But even if those get built, the CHA will still only have completed about half the housing that it promised at this location 2 decades ago.
So still running at a deficit there. All right, nice job, Nick. Thanks to you and to Mick Dumke and the whole team at ProPublica.
Thank you.
And up next, a live report from Irving Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series, so please stay with us.
Don't miss one of our stories. Get them all delivered to your desktop or mobile device with a subscription to the WTTW News Daily Briefing. Go to WTTW.com/dailybriefing and sign up.
Irving Park on Chicago's northwest side is a spacious community area with a variety of local businesses and easy access to transportation. As part of our Chicago Tonight In Your Neighborhood series, reporter Joanna Hernandez and producer Acacia Hernandez spent the day exploring the area. Joanna joins us now to tell us more about some local gems in the community. Joanna.
And Paris, we're right outside of one of those local gems, and we'll tell you why later on in the program when we speak to the owner. Now, within this community, there's multiple neighborhoods, one of those being Old Irving Park. Now, the neighborhood is going through a revitalization with new businesses and projects coming to the area. One of those is a new outpatient medical center by Northwestern along Irving Park Road and North Kenneth Avenue.
It was originally proposed to be I think, 5-story building. We worked with the alderman's office to get them to bring it down and put extra parking underground so that they could make it a 4-story building, which is more in line with the other buildings along this stretch.
Adrian Chan is a local resident and president of the Old Irving Park Association. It's a resident collaboration which Chan says over 200 residents come together to address quality of life matters. Chan says the group works with local leaders to push for change. Recently, the city has committed to adding protected bike lanes along Milwaukee Avenue.
One of the things that I think brings a lot of people to our neighborhood is proximity to transportation. And so we've got access to 2 metro lines, to the Blue Line, easy access to the Kennedy, but we also have Milwaukee Avenue, which is a great direct path to the downtown area. And a lot of people are interested in biking, both downtown and just to other neighborhoods along Milwaukee Avenue. And it's important that that be a safe area for people to bike through.
What also stood out is the Native American presence in the area. Chicago has a large indigenous population with multiple tribes dispersed across the city. Indigenous community leaders have been working for years to provide public housing to Native Americans in Chicago. And in 2024, the first affordable housing complex is expected to be completed, catering to Native people.
I feel like we're not newcomers to this area, certainly, and it just feels really good to finally have a place where we can, make home permanent.
We're looking to have about 45 to 50 units of affordable housing. We're also going to have the first floor is going to be commercial, and we're going to be making sure that we're renting that space out to Native American nonprofits and businesses to be able to provide more support for our residents.
The housing project will be built in Irving Park Road, walking distance from Horner Park and the Chicago River. Both Shelley Tucciarelli and Pamela Silas of Visionary Ventures say the process has been an emotional one and ultimately a big victory.
Seeing community members we lose to other states because of affordability. These are like the core culture keepers in our community that couldn't afford to stay here with us, and I hope we get a few of them to come back. Even just a concentration of families that would go to a local school, so we'd have a presence where our community is visible.
The neighborhood is home to Native American institutions such as the St. Katari Center, a faith-based organization focused on providing outreach programming for the indigenous community in Chicago. The center serves people of all ages with the goal of giving elders and youth a space to practice spirituality.
Are highly engaged with our youth to make them confident in their culture and identity, because sometimes these youth are the only Native Americans in their class or sometimes even in their school. So building up that confidence of who they are and being comfortable, being able to speak about their culture and identity and not shy away from it, because sometimes what happens to these youth is being in an urban setting, they're sometimes disconnected from their home roots of the reservations and tribal lands they come from. So embracing that culture with them is important.
Residents that we spoke with described the neighborhood to be family-friendly with green spaces and many local bars with a diverse dining scene. JT's Genuine Sandwich Shop is still fairly new to the area, but the owner, Chris Cunningham, has brought some of his roots in the neighborhood.
We do coney dogs from Detroit and tenderloins from Iowa and Indiana, so people come to get like a bite of comfort here, and it's really nice to see them coming in and enjoying themselves in person again rather than just handing a bag to somebody out the door.
Cunningham has been a resident for 10 years, and his restaurant is named after his 2 children. He says the people are what has kept his family here.
Great community of neighbors and businesses. We have some of the best parks in the city. Independence Park, Horner Park is, walking distance. Beautiful homes and tree-lined streets. It's the whole package.
And I have to give a shout out to Chris because he served us lunch, and it was the first time that I've ever tried a breaded tenderloin sandwich. It was delicious. And stay tuned. We speak with the owner of Lizard Lounge coming up.
First time, but probably not the last time. All right, Joanna, thank you very much. And up next, hear from the Democratic candidates running in the 3rd Congressional District. But first, we take a look at the weather. Early voting is underway in Chicago, and primary election day is less than 3 weeks away. Voters in Illinois' newly drawn 3rd Congressional District will have 4 candidates to choose from in the Democratic primary. There is also 1 Republican running. The new district was drawn after the 2020 census and reapportionment. It includes parts of the northwest side of Chicago and snakes out to some western suburbs in DuPage County, like Glen Ellen, Bartlett, and Wheaton. And this redrawing makes it the 2nd Latino-majority congressional district in the state. And joining us tonight in the first of a series of Chicago Tonight candidate forums are the Democrats running for Congress in this 3rd district. And they are Ayman Shahade, professor and lecturer at Columbia College Chicago and the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. He's also the director of foreign policy and research for U.S. Representative Marie Newman's campaign. Juan Enrique Aguirre, a registered nurse. Gilbert Villegas, current 36th Ward Alderman in Chicago, and Delia Ramirez, current state representative for the 4th Illinois House District. And a quick note about this format. This is not a formal debate. There will be no opening or closing statements. Candidates will not necessarily get the same questions, and answers will not be timed. Fairness will be our guide. And let's begin. Ms. Ramirez, let's start with guns. The Senate right now is in the middle of tenuous negotiations on gun reforms in the wake of the Uvalde massacre, stipulating that you would probably like to see much more than this. But would you accept a package that includes moving the AR purchase age from 18 to 21 and nationwide red flag laws?
Thank you for having us on this forum, first of all, and it's an honor to be here. I would absolutely support both. We have to do something, and we have to do it as soon as possible. I'd like for us to ban assault rifle weapons right now, but I think if we can get the political will and do the work to be able to ensure that we get universal background checks, that we increase the age of a young person being able to purchase to 21, and we incorporate these red flags, I think that will be a significant step forward to the work that we have to do to be able to ensure that we get these guns. I mean, we have more guns in this country than we have children. We have to get these guns out of these streets.
Mr. Villegas, as you know, that parts of this new 3rd Congressional District do suffer from high rates of gun violence. We know that many of the guns that are found in crime scenes in Cook County come from out of state. What can be done legislatively in Congress to stop this flow of gun violence in Chicago?
Well, I got to say, again, thank you, Paris, for having us on here. Thank WTTW for coming to the table with the workers to get a fair contract. Listen, gun laws, that is the #1 issue that I'm hearing, public safety as I'm going through the district. We've got to do something. Chicago and Illinois have some of the toughest gun laws on the books. But when you have neighboring states like Indiana and Kentucky that have laws that are lax, that's a problem. 60% of the guns that are retrieved from Chicago Police, CPD, are coming from out of state. And so there's a problem here. And so we've got to make sure that at the federal level, we're dealing with gun laws and making sure that we're banning assault weapons. There's a correlation when they banned gun law, when they banned AR-15s and assault rifles. And then the sunset and then mass shootings are up. And so we've got to do something to address that. We've got to increase the age from 18 to 21, background checks, red flags. Listen, Congress has acted today in passing the red flag gun law and then yesterday Protecting Our Kids Act, both garnering bipartisan support. And so there is a will, but we've got to make sure that we're pushing Republicans to understand that these mass shootings are killing kids, and we've got to do something. So I can tell you that I want to make sure that we're banning assault weapons. Listen, I was in the Marines. I fire these things. AR-15, AR stands for assault rifle. There's no reason why civilians should have these. I want to make sure that we're protecting the Second Amendment, but we're also making sure we're protecting second graders as well.
Mr. Aguirre, the next Congress, if the prognosticators are correct, might be a majority Republican. What can realistically be done across the aisle on gun laws?
Thank you so much for asking that question. And it's a reality that my competitors seem to not acknowledge, the fact that Republicans, the GOP, most likely will take control of Congress following the midterm elections. So there's, of course, major legislation that needs to be passed, but it's not going to get passed in one, a Republican-controlled House of Representatives, and number two, it sure as hell is not going to get passed in a Senate-controlled, a Republican-controlled Senate, or even one that's evenly split that has a filibuster where you need 60 votes to pass any type of major reform. So what I would be calling upon on my first day in office, once I'm elected the 3rd congressional representative, is for President Biden to declare gun violence a national emergency in the same way that President Trump declared a national emergency on March 13th, 2020, that mobilized this nation to fight against an invisible enemy. We must declare a national emergency, a public health crisis in this country that is gun violence. Gun violence is now the #1 leading cause of death for children in the United States. And if you want to continue spewing the same rhetoric that the left and the right are spewing, the left is spewing that we need assault rifle bans, the right spewing that we need more mental health care, you got to critically think. And I asked the voters to ask themselves this: what happens when we ban assault rifles and a kid can 3D print that assault rifle at home? What happens when a kid gets a hold of several handguns and commits a mass shooting where 7, 8 individuals are slaughtered instead of 15 or 20?
So you're asking the president to go the executive order out. Mr. Shahade, what do you think can be done at the federal level to specifically tackle this issue in Chicago?
Well, I think one of the biggest problems that we face on all levels, and gun violence is perhaps the most visible issue, is the fact that you have these lobbyists and these super PACs who literally buy politicians into coercion to support lax gun laws. We see this a lot with many politicians around the country who, despite the many massacres that have occurred, go on camera and say that they still support these lax gun laws. And what they do is they conflate a person's amendment right to bear arms with literally allowing guns to be sold as if it's bubble gum. And we can't do that. We need to go after these lobbyists. We need to go after these super PACs. And I'll tell you, Citizens United was one of the worst decisions that the Supreme Court has ever made. And as a person who's running for office now, I can see the ramifications of that with money coming in from the outside of the district, with individuals who have never even been in this district supporting candidates in order to get them elected and to get the candidates to do what they want them to do, basically. I think it's a travesty for our democracy, and you can see the ramifications of that everywhere, especially in the city of Chicago with this rampant gun violence. Look, we have some pretty strict gun laws in Illinois. Most of the guns that actually are in Chicago come from outside of the state of Illinois. And so we need a legislation on the national level as far as background checks are concerned. But more than that, what we need to do ultimately is limit the power of special interest groups, lobbyists, like those who lobby for the NRA that allow lax gun laws.
Well, and I want to pick up on that issue of outside groups, special interest groups. Ms. Ramirez, you've gotten a lot of support from progressive groups. Some of those groups in that wing of the party in the past have called for things like defunding the police. Do you believe there should be less federal funding for police departments like the Chicago Police Department?
I believe we need to be investing in our communities. And truthfully, I believe that we need to get to the root cause of violence. I mean, I live in Humboldt Park in the eastern part of this district. I see the disinvestment in these communities all the time. And it's why at the state level, I helped pass legislation to invest more than $200 million right now into our communities. That's that summer jobs program. That's mental health resources. 3/4 of the calls that 911 gets are for domestic violence. We have to get to the root cause of violence, and I believe we have to invest in our communities if we want to be able to address the safety issues that we're seeing across the country.
Does that mean investing in communities at the expense of providing funding for police departments?
That's investing in our communities by providing police training, as I've already voted to provide. That's investing in our communities by investing in mental health. That's investing in our communities by creating youth jobs, by getting violence prevention and violence interruption programs. We need all of it. It's a comprehensive approach. It's not a cookie cutter. You can't just do one thing. It's a comprehensive approach so that we invest in communities and make it possible for it to be a safe community for all of us.
Mr. Villegas, as you mentioned before, safety is the #1 concern of the residents that are talking to you. Do you believe in more funding for the police department, or do you believe in some of the calls that have called to at least remove some of that funding and invest in other programs?
Listen, knocking on doors in this district, what I've heard is public safety is the #1 issue. This race is about character, and I think the issue of public safety is revealing on why me and my opponent, Delia, are different. My opponent signed a letter saying, defund the police immediately. Immediately. Why? It seemed like a politically popular thing to do back then, but now she's backing away from that position. I swore an oath to defend this country against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and in Congress, I'll keep people safe by investing the right way. We cannot have a either or. This is a holistic approach. The president said it best during the State of the Union. He said, we're not going to defund the police. We're going to fund the police. We're going to train the police. We're going to make sure.
Let me give Ms. Ramirez a chance to respond. Ms. Ramirez, did you call for defunding the police, and have you changed your mind on that?
I signed on to a statement to protect young people that were being tased and hurt by our officers right after George Floyd was killed in public. I signed on to that. And I believe to this moment that we have to have corresponder models. Officers are not social workers. Officers are not clinical counselors. They're not equipped to address issues of mental health. And so we should ask ourselves, what does that hashtag mean? And why is my opponent weaponizing a hashtag instead of talking about how he's a combat lobbyist? He comes from a political mentor who he hasn't even returned money from, who's going to prison as a corruption super spreader, as the judge has called him. What I hear in the community, because I come from this community, I've served in this community, is that they want safe communities. They want communities that are invested in. They need full-time legislators, not corporate lobbyists.
I do need to move on.
Mr. Well, wait, Paris, you have to understand.
Very quickly, sir, because I do want to move on.
Paris. Okay. You talk about, this is the misinformation that Ms. Ramirez has been.
Ramirez.
Yeah, Ramirez. Right. So let me just say this. The reality is this. When she had an opportunity to stand up to Mike Madigan, she didn't. 19 state legislators stood up and said enough. And she didn't. She was not one of them.
All right, so we can go back and forth all day. I need to move on to some other issues. There's issues like abortion. Mr. Aguirre, you have a nursing background. Should this draft opinion on Roe v. Wade become the final ruling from the Supreme Court, what kind of abortion legislation would you approve at the national level? Would it be abortion without restriction? Would it be abortion up until the fetus is viable outside of the womb?
So I grew up in a low-income household, in a Latino household, part of immigrants, and I grew up learning Christian values that same-sex marriage shouldn't be allowed and that abortion shouldn't be allowed either. But attending the University of Michigan School of Nursing and becoming a registered nurse myself, I was exposed to different kinds of patients that were seeking treatment for an abortion, who were underage in the state of Michigan, patients who were part of the LGBTQI+ community. And I'm glad to say that I've learned a lot from those experiences, and now I do fully support federal legislation that codifies Roe v. Wade, a woman's right to terminate for abortion. It should be up to the healthcare provider, the nurses, the doctor, and the woman to make that decision, not legislatures who have absolutely no medical experience.
All right, Mr. Shahade, Congresswoman Marie Newman is under ethics investigation because of a deal that you say you struck with her. So if you would not run against her, she would hire you on her staff. That never really happened, so you sued. Did you two sign a deal where you would drop out of the race against her and she'd hire you? And two, did she violate that contract?
First of all, this is all misinformation. I was never a candidate for Congress. I never declared candidacy. I never hired anybody. I never fundraised. I never did any of those things. I was considering a run, and there's nothing that states that I, in any way, shape, or form, that I ran. Did Marie and I sign a contract? Yes, we did. Was it for me to drop out of the race? Absolutely not. I was not in the race. And I think that this is an issue that was brought on by a right-wing organization that the media has latched onto. And quite frankly, Marie and I have had our issues in the past, but I can tell you this is a hit job on her, and I'm collateral damage for it. So read the facts, take a look at the reality of the situation. Think the facts are going to come out after the primary.
All right.
And so, you will see that this is just what it was. It was just nothing but a hit job.
You hadn't been
it's sensationalized media. That's all.
You hadn't been a declared candidate.
Quid pro quo.
Ms. Ramirez, I want to talk about inflation, high gas prices hovering around $6 a gallon here in Chicago. What, if anything, can be done legislatively to deal with this?
We go back to the corporations, right? And the fuel companies, the oil companies are part of that. They are literally deciding and determining how much someone's going to be paying at the gas station. Here in Illinois, we put in a tax break on gasoline, but it's not enough. We need to think about long term. People are worried about what they're going to do about paying and affording the ability to put gas and go to work, but also childcare.
All right.
I think a lot of work to be done, and we have to invest in childcare.
Mr. Villegas, I want to give this question to you as well. We only have a short time left.
Yeah, absolutely. So what you're seeing is oil companies gouging consumers. And so Congress has to bring them in and find out what is it that we can do as congressmen and women to hold these big oil companies accountable. But we also got to make sure we're bringing back light manufacturing back to America. The supply chain issue has also compounded with inflation. And so we got to be more creative. The Competes Act is a great first step in bringing microchips back to America to be manufactured, but there's more to do. And I can tell you that there's corporations out there that are prepared, ready to do light manufacturing. We just got to make sure Congress
Okay, a lot of issues to deal with, but we are going to have to leave it right there. And our thanks to candidates Ayman Shahade, Juan Enrique Aguirre, Gilbert Villegas, and Delia Ramirez. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And a reminder that Illinois' primary election is less than 3 weeks away. Be sure to check out our 2022 voter guide launched this week. And there you can hear from the candidates in their own words on why they want your vote. You can also find your polling location on Election Day. It's all at WTTW.com/voter guide. And we're back with more Chicago Tonight in just a moment. But first, a look at some of our upcoming candidate forums. And now back to Joanna Hernandez, who spent the day in Irving Park as part of our In Your Neighborhood series. Joanna.
Thanks, Paris. We're now here with Liz Kavanaugh, owner of Lizard Lakewood Lounge. Thank you for joining us tonight. Now, I want to start off with this rad mural right behind us outside your bar. Tell me the connection between the mural and the bar.
Well, that would be me.
Awesome.
It's like there's going to be an Irish flag here on this side, and the right side represents Ireland. And that scary-looking lizard in the middle is me, Lizard. My dad called me Lizard as a kid. And then on the left side there is Chicago and the Chicago skyline and lizards and the cocktail. So, and it's done by our local artist, good friend of mine, Catherine Eli. She's amazing. So
it's very meaningful.
Very, very.
So
and I wanted to bring the bar outside, which is full of artwork by loads of local artists.
And you've owned this bar for 14 years now.
Yes.
Can you just briefly tell me the history of this bar?
Well, I originally bought it when it was lost and found, which was the oldest running lesbian bar in the country. And it was a safe haven for the lesbian community. And since 1964, they had it, before I was born, just. And that was Ava Allen and Shirley Christensen, and they were groundbreakers. Ava was inducted into the Gay and Lesbian Hall of Fame with Billie Jean King the same time. So it's a privilege to take over from her. The bar is now fully inclusive. It's not gay anymore, but it's everybody. Wow. And it's a warm, welcoming place for the community, and we have live music 5 nights a week. We have karaoke on Saturdays and trivia and bingo, and
I want to quickly talk about that, because I can only assume it feels great to finally have live bands coming here. Tell me more about your passions and how the community has supported you.
The community has been amazing. As I said, all local artists come to me. We've had art shows, we've had craft fairs, I've had music festivals here, and as I said, live music, and all the artists come to me and go, Liz, I'd love to play, you know, because it's not one of the big venues, and it's neighborhood, and you know, it's a dog bar. It's been a dog bar since I opened, before dog bars were in the city, and
it's a staple in the community, I can assume.
Yes, and we've had dog birthday parties. We've had 5 weddings, including my own, in November. So yeah,
it's a very meaningful bar to you.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you're going to have a lot of live bands coming up.
Yes, I do.
All right. Well,
5 days a week. Thank you.
Well,
I have a Smiths band right now, tribute Smiths band called Still Ill. They're in there. They're stopped now, so they can watch. I had to stop them. So,
awesome. Well, thank you, Liz, so much for joining us.
Thank you, Joanna. Really appreciate it.
Now, that is all we have tonight from Irving Park. Paris, I send it back to you.
Smith's cover band, maybe Morrissey will show up. Seems like the kind of place that he would like. A lot of fun stuff happening there. Joanna, thanks very much. And I know earlier today you spoke with John Ebersole, who works at foster care agency Lydia Home. Viewers can watch that conversation on our website. The Chicago Blues Fest started today and runs through Sunday in Millennium Park and a few locations around town. A local singer-songwriter has been going to the festival since her mother took her in a stroller. Now she'll be on stage, and Mom will be watching from the wings. Melody Angel, yes, that's her real name. She has blues in her DNA. Producer Mark Vitale has the story.
If you really love music, you must also love the blues. It is the baseline for every form of music we have in this country, even hip-hop. It's fairly uncommon to see black female guitar players. I'm fighting for the young girl that comes up to me, the young black girl that comes up to me all the time and says, I want to play like you, I want to do this. I feel it's my job to make that easier for her.
One person who made it easier for Melody Angel was her mother, who's also her manager and sometimes stylist.
It's a bit overwhelming sometimes to see her and all that she can do, you know, seeing her as a little bitty baby and grow. But I saw this spark in her. It was kind of undeniable.
Angel still plays the Fender Stratocaster her mother bought her at a pawn shop.
I will never forget the day she came home from that pawn shop, okay? It changed my life. Of course, I cried like a baby. I remember thinking, okay, one day I'm gonna be on stage with this guitar, you know, playing for thousands of people. That happened. So I'm like, when little kids say their dreams out loud, it's not a small thing. It's a big thing. It can actually come true.
The lifelong South Sider has carried her guitar from Europe to Australia. She has also acted on stage at Court Theater and the Goodman. And she just released her latest LP of original material.
One of the things I learned about writing was from the artists that I loved. And when I listened to them in their interviews, they always talked about being true to themselves. And that's how I look at songwriting. It's this peaceful release. Whatever's on my heart, whether it's good or bad, I can release it.
Melody Angel comes from a musical family. Her mother's cousin was Otis Rush, the late Chicago bluesman.
I do admit I didn't want her to really go into it because I know how difficult this industry is. But when you come here, you have to do what your purpose to do. So it's no way I would come in between that. I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to perform in front of people again. And that in itself is a triumph for me.
For Chicago Tonight, this is Mark Vitale.
Melody Angel just released her new record, Foxy. She plays at Reggie's on Friday night, and she and her band play 2 sets at the Chicago Blues Fest this weekend. On Saturday, they'll be at the Pritzker Pavilion, and on Sunday, they play a neighborhood stage in Bronzeville. Find out more on our website. And we're back to wrap things up right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by Alexandra and John Nichols, the Jim and Kay Mabie family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
And that is our show for this Thursday night. Don't forget you can get Chicago Tonight streamed on Facebook, YouTube, and our website, WTTW.com/news. And please join us tomorrow night live at 7 for the Weekend Review. And now for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Paris Schutz. Thank you so much for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a great evening.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a proud sponsor of diversity, equity, and inclusion-focused free continuing legal education for lawyers throughout the region.
She was the ultimate agitator and feared because of it.
As racial terror reigned over the South, a young African-American woman struck back with her pen.
There was never a time when Ida B. Wells was not getting pushed back.
Black Lives Matter is addressing the same issues that Ida B. Wells took up in the 1880s and 90s.
Redemption. Revolution. Les Miserables. Celebrate the 25th anniversary of the ultimate people's musical, Les Miserables, 25th anniversary concert at the O2.
Saturday at 7 on WTTW.
The 2022 WTTW Great Treasure Hunt Sweepstakes is here. Enter for your chance to win the spring early bird prize from our friends at Pedigo Electric Bikes of Winnetka. You'll be off on your next adventure on a brand new electric bike of your choice. Whether you choose a comfort cruiser, low step, trail ready adventure, or city commuter bike, you'll ride further, faster, and more comfortably with Pedigo's Whisper Quiet motor, lightweight battery, and advanced electronics. But you must enter by June 30th. Visit WTTW.com/sweepstakes for your chance to win.
I thought we had a plan for Dad. He was set to go to the senior living community right by my house. Then a friend suggested I talk to a place for Mom. They really opened my eyes. My advisor listened and understood his needs and showed us options that were still nearby but a better fit for Dad. Now he's in a warm, engaging community with a big group of friends. I know we made the better choice.
Our service to your family today.
What makes for a great vacation depends on who you ask. Are you looking to get away or bring everyone together? Do you want to get outside and play or see a play at the plate? Do you want to feed your soul or stuff your face? Fortunately, however you operate, I've got you covered. The name's Missouri, but you can call me Mo. And I have just one question. What's your MO?
WTTW programming originates from the Renee Crown Public Media Center. Programming on WTTW is made possible in part by Abbott.
The best practice in Glasgow offered me a job. I have to work out if there's something here worth staying for.
Oh, someone?
Helen,
I'd like to have danced with you again.
if your toes could take it.
Tristan!
Why don't you try standing up to him? Have you met my brother?
You belong here. This is your home.
Sunday on WTTW.
Hi, I'm Nate, and you're watching WTTW Chicago.
This program was made possible in part by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.